Today I'm going to do that long-awaited test I've been talking about between two direct-to-consumer e-mountain bikes. The two that I ride, one from Canyon and one from YT. I've been riding the Canyon Spectral On CF8 for over a year now, and the YT Decoy Core 4 for most of this summer, and comparing them back and forth. And I've done a lot of those comparisons on this channel for suspension and other elements of the bike. Today I'm going to do a comparison overall of the two and give you an idea of which bike might be best for you. I'm Patrick from Road Less Traveled. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do. You'll see more videos just like this one comparing bikes, trails in the Truckee Tahoe area and elsewhere, and lots of components. The YT Decoy Core 4 is a bike that I purchased just this year for $5,600, and the Canyon Spectral On is a bike that I purchased last year, and today, with the upgrades that I put on it, the cost is about the same as the YT Decoy. So really this comparison is two bikes of similar cost. The bikes are very similar. The battery size is different. It's 720 watt hours on the Decoy Core 4 and 900 watt hours on the Canyon Spectral On. Wheel size are both MX, meaning 29 in the front and 27.5 in the rear. And suspension's a little bit more on the YT with 170 in the front and 165 in the rear, where the Canyon with the upgrades that I put on it, which I'll describe in a minute, are 160 and 155. The motors on both those bikes now are EP801, but my bike has an EP8 on the Canyon Spectral On, and those motors are a little bit different. You can see one of my previous videos, the difference that makes. I won't be going into that in this video because you really can buy both bikes with the same motor now. And of course, both bikes are very similar in terms of the frame. They're both full carbon and very similar geometry. I mean, you're going to see some differences when you look at the measurements, but geometry wise, there's just a very slight difference. And I'll talk about that in ride quality. So my ride impressions are very similar. If I was to describe a difference, I would say the YT is a little bit better when cornering. And if you really like to lean the bike, it will really go into a lean really well on these nice smooth kind of flowy corners, where the Canyon may be a little bit more nimble in tight situations. And that probably has something to do with the head angle, which is slightly different, a little bit more slack on the YT. The suspension on both bikes is very similar now that I've made the upgrades to the Canyon. I put Fox 38 factory forks on the front and Cane Creek Kitsuma rear shock in the rear, and that cost about, I'd say, depending on what kind of deal you can get online or where you buy it, it could be anywhere between $1,500 and $2,000. So that brings the price of the bikes to about the same price, maybe a little bit more for the Canyon with that upgrade. Overall, however, as I said, the rides are very similar. I do like the action of the Olin suspension on the YT a little bit more for my riding style. My feeling is the fork reacts a little bit better to very harsh, fast riding, but it might be a little rougher in sort of smoother, less rough riding. The rear coil is something I've kind of gotten used to as being a nice flowy feeling, a little bit more springy feeling, and so I've put a little bit of a nod to the YT in the suspension department. Now let's talk a little bit about components. The YT does have better brakes in my opinion. The Dominion A4 brakes with a 220 millimeter rotor in the front really grabs well, and it's easily controllable, and it doesn't drift at all as the ride gets further along and things heat up. Where with the Canyon, the the brakes are not as grabby. And if I move from the YT to the Canyon, like if I'm trading bikes on the trail with somebody, I immediately have to get used to that Canyon braking action because it's not grabbing as much. A couple other differences, the YT dropper post seems to be a little bit smoother acting and a little bit more responsive to changes in height. The seat mount on the YTR does seem to squeak a little bit, and I haven't resolved that. Could be I just need to tighten it a little bit in some way. And then one thing that's an advantage for the Canyon is the water bottle, and I didn't think that was a big deal at first, but I really can't use any water bottle except the one that came with the YT because it's a special sized water bottle fit in the frame size that they have, given there's not a lot of room between this shock and the rest of the frame. And it's a pretty expensive water bottle, so I don't plan to buy another one. And with the Canyon, I can choose all the water bottles that I have because it's a standard water bottle mount. The other thing that is very different between the two bikes is the charging port. On the Canyon, you need to remove the side cover. It's a magnetic, it's magnetically held on. So you just pull it off and then you put the charger into that same port that the motor would normally connect in. So you're constantly disconnecting and connecting the motor, and that has caused me problems on the trail when it becomes disconnected, and sometimes in the garage just getting it to connect solidly and begin charging is a problem because of that magnet. I think I've probably got metallic in some of the dirt that's around here, and or sand maybe that's sticking in there, and it's just preventing that connection from happening. So it's a little bit unreliable, but I've learned to deal with it. The YT is perfectly reliable and very easy to access. Actually, you don't have to get down on the ground and low to the motor. It's up near the headset on the frame. It's a dedicated port. You just pull a little rubber stopper off of it and slide the connector in, and it works every time. So it's nice having a separate dedicated charging port for that. With the YT, I had more cable rattles than I've had with other bikes, and I had to chase those down. I've shown how I did that in one of my videos, so you can take a look at that. But once I addressed each of those, I don't have that problem anymore. It's just one of those things that you have to put a little bit of time into if it bothers you like it does me. So let's talk about the reasons you might want to buy one of these two bikes. Both of the bikes are a great deal. So both of these bikes, you're going to save $1,000 to $2,000 over non-direct-to-consumer bikes from my experience, and unless you can get a really good deal through a bike shop. If you do buy a direct-consumer bike, you're going to have to do the assembly. If you're okay with doing the assembly, that's not that hard. Comes shipped in a box that makes the process easy, as long as whoever delivered it doesn't destroy the box like they did on one of mine, and it doesn't take very long. Now, what bike should you buy if you're considering these two bikes? Well, here's my recommendations based on my experience with both bikes and what might appeal to somebody considering them both. I would buy the YT if you didn't want to go through making the upgrades that I described earlier to the suspension for the most part. If you don't want to have to go through the process of doing all that, and it's a bit of work, the YT comes with a really good suspension. Now you can buy a higher grade of the Canyon Spectral On instead of the CF8. You could go with the higher version of it. It comes with a Fox suspension. It doesn't come with a 38 millimeter though, and I've really been happy with 38 millimeter forks, and I think it's worth having 38 millimeter forks. The YT I would get if you like the way that the connector works, and that's an important thing to you. It is an important thing to me, and I really appreciate being able to connect the wire right near the top of the headset and not worry about any kind of reliability issues with it. If you want a bike that's a bit easier to control at speed in really technical descents or fast descents, the YT, I really like the way the forks eat up the harshness in the trail, and I like the geometry and the feeling of stability of the YT in faster descent type situations. Now, I have the silver color on the YT, and I probably got more compliments on that color than I've had on the Canyon Spectral On, which is the black. You can get the YT in black as well, but if you want, for vanity purposes, maybe you want the silver so you can get compliments. Now, who would get the Canyon? As I mentioned earlier, if you're doing longer rides where you're climbing up to 5,000 feet, you're doing maybe 45 miles, the 900 watt-hour battery is essential. You need at least that much to go that kind of distance and that kind of climbing. With the YT, with the 720 watt-hour battery, you're really only going to make it maybe 3,000, 3,500 feet of climbing in, say, 35 miles. So it depends on how much riding you do and what kind of area you live in. If you're not in a hilly or mountainy area like I am, then 720 watt hours is perfectly enough. If you want to upgrade the suspension with your choice of suspension, the YT comes with a suspension that's good right out of the box, and so it wouldn't make sense to change it. But if you want to do some customization and buy a cheaper bike, put some money into suspension, the Canyon might be the way to go. Or if you just want to save money, I mean, you're going to get this bike for a lot less than you're going to get the YT with a stock suspension. And if you're not going to make upgrades to it, or you're not as worried about the suspension, then that may be the bike for you. The Canyon is a little bit easier to maneuver on tight stuff, and maybe if you're sitting, it'd be a little bit easier to maneuver. But when I talk about maneuverability, even on the downhill stuff with the YT, this is picky. You're going to get used to either bike, and you jump on the other bike and it's immediately not going to feel as good. That's the difference. I can just get used to the YT and ride it a little bit more confidently in some of the more faster sections than I can with the Canyon, but then I do feel comfortable with the Canyon when I'm in a little tight woodsy stuff. You can't go wrong with either of these bikes, but hopefully some of the things that I've shared will help you make a decision on which one you want. Either way, you can have a lot of fun. I have a blast on both bikes. I've given you my reasons why I might choose one over the other, but they're very small differences. And if you've never had an e-mountain bike before, just get ready to have a heck of a lot of fun. Nice. Nice, 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 nice. Yes. Thanks to all of you who have subscribed. This channel is all about mountain biking, and I'm really enjoying putting these videos together. I also enjoy comments and questions, and I try to answer every one of them. So if you have any, please put a question in the comments below. And subscribe if you haven't subscribed.